This is what I presented to Parliament, is that's what parliaments do, is if there's any ambiguity about the law, then you pass a law to make it legal. And Russia broke it. Russia has a moral obligation to fix it. It's financially the right thing to do. At the moment, we're digging into our own pockets to fund Ukraine.
Now, MPs are being urged to introduce US-style laws to enable frozen Russian assets to be used for aid to Ukraine. The call comes from Bill Browder, the financier and Kremlin critic, whose lawyer died in Russian custody in 2009. He was giving evidence today to the Treasury Select Committee, and he joins us now on Times Radio. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening to you.
We'll talk about what you had to say today in just a moment, but I would love your reaction to what we've heard from the director of GCHQ today, Anne Keast Butler. She issued concern over Vladimir Putin plotting physical attacks on the West, essentially saying Moscow is looking to go further than attacks simply in cyberspace. We've seen some evidence of that when you think about the Salisbury poisoning and other famous cases. But I wonder what you made of her direct warning today on this.
Well, I think it's already started to happen. We've seen a number of incidents. I'm aware of, I think, 6 incidents where the Russian government has either used their own agents or hired various types of criminals to do arson attacks, create all sorts of physical attacks on infrastructure connected to supporting the war. And these are 6 attacks that we're aware of. And for everything that we're aware of, there's probably dozens that we're not aware of. And so what you need to understand about Putin is that now that he's sort of fully taken his mask of respectability off, he's ready to do almost anything because there's no more consequences to him than we've already imposed. And so we should expect some real nastiness. We should expect violence. We should expect arson. We should expect sabotage here in the UK and in many other countries around the world.
Are we doing enough with your caution of that? Are we doing enough about it?
Well, I mean, it's hard. It's how do you defend yourself against an enemy which has its tentacles everywhere? I mean, the problem is that for 24 years, we welcomed Russian oligarchs and people connected to Russia with open arms here in the UK, and they have permeated every element of British society. And not only that, many of them have become British. And so how do you figure out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones? And as a result, you have a lot of people who are potentially able to help Russia out, to do things for Russia. And it's almost impossible to figure out, who's who.
That leads us on nicely, really, to what you were talking about today, to the Treasury Committee and frozen Russian assets, money that's been frozen, property, etc., that's been frozen in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You are calling for something specific, essentially for UK Parliament to match what the United States is doing. Just explain what that is.
So after the war began, the United Kingdom, US, EU, Australia, and various other countries froze $300 billion of Russian central bank reserves. And the intention was that we thought the war would last, or actually some people thought the war would last a short period of time, and that would be part of the negotiation to end the war. Well, the war has gone on for now more than 2 years. Putin has done an unbelievable amount of damage to Ukraine, somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion. And so it becomes now more obvious than ever that money should go to Ukraine, first to defend themselves and second to rebuild. And there are a number of people that say, well, that's all fair and good, but is it legal? And the simple answer to that question, and this is what I presented to Parliament, is that's what parliaments do, is if there's any ambiguity about the law, then you pass a law to make it legal. And Russia broke it. Russia has a moral obligation to fix it. It's financially the right thing to do. At the moment, we're digging into our own pockets to fund Ukraine. I think Putin should fund Ukraine before the British taxpayers do.
Okay. I mean, could there be an argument that actually, all of that money may have been the result of, honest Russian business within the UK or elsewhere? Is there anything to be said for that money being non-corrupt, if you see what I mean?
Well, so it's very important that there's two types of money. There is Russian state money, and then there's Russian oligarch private money. And my argument is that we go after the Russian state money first.
Okay.
And the Russian state money is absolutely seizable because the Russian state was the one who was responsible for this war, and so they're responsible for paying for it. And then when it comes to individuals, that's a much more complicated story, and it really depends on whether those individuals are sort of in collusion with the Russian state or not.
Very briefly, Bill, because I must move on. I was intrigued to hear that before the Ukraine war, you would struggle to get a meeting with an MP, and now politicians are calling you asking for your advice.
Well, I was very unpopular when I was running around for many years pushing for what I called Magnitsky sanctions, named after my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, who was murdered, which were asset freezing and visa bans on human rights violators. And at the time that I was pushing it, he was killed in 2009. Everyone was feeding at the trough of Russian money here in the UK, and nobody wanted to, do anything to stop that flow of money. And so I was a sort of toxic, unpleasant person for them because I was the one suggesting something that would be very unprofitable for a lot of people. Now, of course, that's changed a lot since the war has started, and whatever unpopularity I had before has all been completely washed away, as we're all now understanding we have a common enemy to fight.
Yeah. Look, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you once again. Bill Browder, thank you very much, financier and Kremlin critic. Good to have you on. Thank you. There's more detail online, actually, about what Bill Browder has been speaking to the Treasury Select Committee about today. His call for frozen Russian assets to be directly used to help Ukraine in the war effort.